of the park in business and entrepreneurship. Together, we'll share real practical advice, exchange real stories, and have real talk that will help us to level up our businesses and our brands in a way that will preserve our greatest asset, womanhood.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of 20 Minutes of Your Time with your host, Dr. Christine Kozacek, and myself, LaShonda Milner. We are your host of the Real Business Women of Charlotte. And both of us, we're so committed to bringing some amazing business women that are experts, that are influencers, that are movers and shakers, that are actually moving and shaking up in a positive way in their industries, in their communities. And what we do with these brilliant women is to have unscripted conversations, from dealing with maybe life lessons, some fun facts about them so you can know the other side of them, maybe the good, bad, the ugly of being in business, just whatever comes up that's meaningful to help you in your business within the 20 minutes of time. That's the type of conversation that we have. And so without moving any further, we always like to just stop and say thank you, thank you, thank you to our loyal listeners, to our new listeners. We know each of you have a choice of where you spend your time. And so it means a lot for you to choose this platform. And what we do is ask for your trust in us. We bring these type of women that will hopefully impact you and help you build your business. And so we've done this again today by bringing you another amazing expert who has 20 years in PR and strategic communications. And that is none other than Nicole Peternel of Minnesota, but lives in Charlotte. And she is the CEO of Rain Communications. That's REIN, Rain Communications. She has worked both in the corporate setting and the agency side in cities such as Minneapolis and Chicago. She positions global brands in every major industry. She's represented companies such as, and I know we know all of these, the NFL, Kenmore, McDonald's, the good old French fries, Hewlett, Packard, and Red Bull. And she's led them in areas like media relations, thought leadership, speaker training, media training, and content strategy. And it takes an expert like this to explain all of that. We'll get to that in just a second. Nicole has secured hundreds of her clients and prepared them for speaking engagements and press interviews with people such as the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes magazine, the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, People magazine, NSNBC, and Fox. And the list goes on and on and on. We just want to get started with this conversation with Nicole. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I know I'm kicking off your second season, so that is quite the honor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And hi to my business partner, Dr. Kozacek. How are you today?
I am great, LaShonda. Doing great.
Good, good. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We'd like to kind of start out with some fun facts, knowing that other side of who Nicole is. I mean, you are really what we call a boy mom, and you've got two boys, and we call our husbands sometimes part of our children, but you're in a household. You're in a household full of boys, and I'm sure this time with COVID and all, you all are all together. What are some fun things that happens around your household?
Yeah, so my house, as you said, it's a boy house, and we throw in two dogs there as well. It's chaos, honestly. I love clearly both of them, all three of them, if you will, but they never stop moving. I'm the parent that's almost like, hey, do you guys want to sit down and watch a movie? Because it's constant. I sometimes share videos of them, they take all the cushions off the couch and they're jumping off of there, onto the floor. My youngest, we just converted him from a crib to an actual bed. And so God forbid we throw away the crib mattress because that can now be used as a tumbling mat. So it's never a dull moment. It's a lot of fun. It's exhausting, but I try to soak up every minute because I know they won't be this age forever.
No, how old are they?
So my youngest is 3, his name is Rowan, and the oldest is 7, and his name is Jackson. So Jackson is in 1st grade doing virtual learning from home. So that's been very interesting. Thankfully, my husband is incredibly hands-on, has been, really helping him through most of that while I've been pretty busy at work, actually. So, yeah, it's great. I go home, and a lot of times they're like, I can't wait to go home and relax. And I go home and it's just like phase 2 of craziness for the day. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
I can understand the tumbling. As soon as all my grandkids get here, the 8-year-old especially, he'll take all the couch cushions, put them on the floor, and go from the kitchen and dive and just do somersaults. And I look at him and go, Elijah, you're getting too old for that. You're going to destroy Nana's couch.
The couch is pretty much just right. I actually, I think it was Rowan, the youngest one's birthday, I gave in this year, and I actually bought them a tumbling mat to put in the living room, because I'm like, I want you to be safe, because you're not listening to me about not jumping off things. And so here, I know it's definitely helping them to be probably more reckless and crazy, but at least they won't, get a concussion, have to get stitches or something. At least that's my hope.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, again, thank you for, participating in our show today and being the first on our season 2. The question that I want to ask you today is, the Real Business Women Charlotte is about being real with the women out there, especially women that are starting out with their business. And that's happening a lot right now in the COVID. They're going from the career, to corporate world, to home, to being teachers virtually for our kids. How did you start in this? And what were some of the mistakes that you made that you want to share with the women? And what are some of the successes that you made to share with the women?
So just a little background. I've been doing PR for 20 years now. And so it's interesting because I started in the Twin Cities, which is where I was born, raised, went to college, and worked in entertainment for a while, doing PR there, and then moved to Chicago during the recession. So brilliant move by my part, but moved there. And because the economy was so unstable, a lot of the large agencies, they still had clients that they needed to service, but they were really, really apprehensive about hiring on new talent. So I was able to really take on large projects at multiple agencies and really kind of get a taste of it. That's why I got to work on so many diverse brands, was because no one wanted to take on a whole new team. They didn't know if clients were going to be leaving, but they definitely needed that help. So I started in freelance, and then, kind of moved my way into more of a consultant role, really going across some of the larger agencies and brands there in Chicago. When I moved to Charlotte, I went agency side for a while, and it wasn't until I had my second child. I've always been a person that's really kind of struggled with anxiety. Since, honestly, it was more so probably since 9/11, but depression in high school, and postpartum anxiety, and just the demands I had of being an executive. I was traveling all the time, just kind of hit me, and I was having panic attacks, and that's when I decided to leave and become an entrepreneur. So as much as people say, like, oh, how did you know it was time to take the plunge, and what things and what steps did you take to know that you were in the right place? I always say I was more like pushed off the ledge. I knew I had to do something different if I was going to be healthy and show up as, a good professional, but also as a mom and wife. And so, there wasn't a really calculated plan. I knew what I knew about PR. I knew I had a lot of experience and kind of that strategy realm that I could bring to the table. And I happened to meet a journalist around the same time, right before actually I had my second child. And her and I often discussed how we saw a gap in the marketplace for bringing the insight of a journalist together with the vision of a strategist. And so we co-founded Rain Communications. She was looking to get out of news. I was looking to do something on my own. And so I will say it was really two things. It was life circumstance, right? In my mind, I would work less, which is laughable because I don't think any entrepreneur ever works less. But I could work more on my own terms. But it was also seeing that in the marketplace and the industry of public relations, you have journalists who write, and they sometimes leave news to do that, but they don't have that strategy background. And then you have strategists like myself who can, I can lay out a great strategy and figure out what the goals and the objectives are and how we reach those. But I'm not a natural storyteller like Britt is. And so when we co-founded Brain, it was the two of us together. And we really started doing a lot of media training, bringing those perspectives. And then that morphed into adding extra services and really going back into the PR that I was thinking I would actually leave for a while, but here I am. So I took over the company a year and a half ago, and Britt went back to work at CNN. She still is our director of media relations and works in tandem with me on a lot of things. But yeah, I don't know if there's mistakes that have been made. They're all lessons, right? But it was really for me knowing I could not continue the way I was continuing and had to make some changes. And that was starting communication.
And then Nicole, you're talking about, we talk about the mistakes, the lessons, and you're absolutely right. They always say it's, we have lessons. Now, one of your platforms is mental health. Now, how is it that, through this COVID, how are you coping, and how are you seeing other, business partners of yours coping mentally and running a business at the same time through this COVID?
Yeah, it's a lot, right? I think it's a lot for business owners. I think it's a lot for moms. I think it's a lot for everyone. It's a lot for my 7-year-old. I think as far as managing it goes, one of the, I guess you could say a blessing or a superpower of having anxiety around general life, like I have generalized anxiety disorder, is that you're inundated with it all the time. You have that racing mind. You have those things that are always kind of going anyhow. I meditate, I take medication, I do all of those kind of self-care things that help me with that. But with the election this year, and just kind of division and things that were happening in communities, and then obviously with COVID, it's been a lot. But because I'm used to trying to have to manage these things in a day-to-day, even without all of these external forces, I think I've just kind of come to realize it's one of those things that you will overcome and you will get through. And you have to be flexible. Thankfully for me, I'm a fairly flexible person. I don't try to take myself too seriously. And I'm just like, it'll work out. What can we do that is in our control? And everything else, I just kind of give up to God to figure out. So, that doesn't mean we don't show up and do our best and make plans and do all of those things, but it's ever moving, and we always have to be flexible in changing what our direction is.
Absolutely.
And so, Nicole, I want to, I don't want to stay on this long enough, but I think when we talk about the anxiety and Dr. Kozachuk bringing up about mental health, I just want to kind of direct that back for clarity for our listeners and even for my own information. I mean, you've had that experience moving from corporate into entrepreneurship. And if I heard correctly, a big part of that decision was dealing with health. And so, you made that decision, you jumped over into entrepreneurship. Now, health didn't go away, but it helped. So just want to bring up for our listeners that whole clarity that, yes, moving from corporate to entrepreneurship, working on our own, making our own decisions, still that does not eliminate some of the other issues that we personally have to deal with. If you could talk a little bit more about that, more about the anxiety and the mental health personal experience that you have.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it's common, right? We talk to a lot of different people that we all struggle with something, and I'm a firm believer in that. I'm also a firm believer that unless we're super hyper aware, we all have coping mechanisms that aren't necessarily healthy, but that we project, right? So
yeah. Okay. So
while we're getting her in, sorry, LaShawn, while we're getting her in, what we'll do is I'll show the video for our why of how we started and why we started. So I'll go ahead and share that with our listeners until she can get back on. Okay. For 2 years, I have been trying to birth this, the Real Business Women of Charlotte. I've been in business for over 24 years, and I've seen the struggles of women
of what they go through trying to balance just not their business, but also their family lives.
I found women to be driven intuitively, be driven by their big hearts, be driven by their talents and many capabilities.
Is that struggle?
It's time to hear those voices and hear those stories.
Not just here in the city of Charlotte. I want someone in Africa or Guyana or, kind of to know that they're not alone, that they can reach out to every woman out there to get the advice they need for their businesses.
Story can change someone.
I want women to succeed, and they need to know that, it's rough, but it's worth it.
Okay, she was unable to.
Okay.
There she is.
There we go. Welcome back.
Well, that's perfect. Flexible, nothing in our control. My computer apparently just shut down and said it was going to decide to upload software. Never happened before, but here we are.
On our last show, right as I closed, and I was having problems with it, it stayed. For some reason, it wasn't charging, and I have it connected. And right as I closed, it shut off. And what I didn't tell you, LaShonda, I had to go back in and realize that the show was still running because it's on my phone.
That's the life of entrepreneurship, is what we were talking about. That change. We might leave from corporate, issues, but the owning a business has its own issues. So go ahead and continue that, if you will, Nicole.
Sure, and I'll have to think back where my train of thought was there. I think it was just the fact that, that we all have different coping mechanisms. And so for me, a lot of my anxiety and depression, those things actually stem from some childhood trauma, right? They manifest themselves as they get older. They come out in forms of low self-esteem and not necessarily being able to handle things well. And so thankfully I'm in my 40s now. And I think, I care less about what other people think about me. I think it's almost like a gift of getting older. But I've also done a lot of work on myself to get to that point. And so for me, I try to make healthy decisions outside of just my work to help me cope with when I am in work. And I'm a firm believer that, surrounding yourself with people that you can truly trust. For me, that's other women entrepreneurs. And it wasn't all of them. Sometimes you get to know some and you find others are a better fit. I truly feel like I have that group of people for myself now. I live on a lifestyle that I don't drink. I don't consume alcohol. We know alcohol is a depressant. And so as a person that has depression and anxiety, it just makes it all worse. There's never been a morning that I woke up and said, gosh, I wish I would have drank last night. But there are plenty that I had woken up with heightened anxiety, not feeling right. And so that's been a lifestyle change that's really, really helped me and how I show up for other people and my family. I think a lot of times it's also just a mindset. Like, we are equipped with what it is that we need to do to get the things done, right? We are. So for us, it's managing what that looks like and believing in ourselves. And I know that's so cliche, but really realizing like we are equipped. And that was kind of my word for the year, was equipped. But we are equipped with everything we need to get done the things that we need to get done. It really is believing in yourself and realizing that what other people think about you isn't as important what you think about yourself. And so one last point to that is, I realize for myself, and I tell my sons this, is like every day in every situation, and I'm not by no means perfect, but I try to act with integrity, where I treat people well, whether that's in business or in friendships or the people that work for me. And, I don't look for the easy way out. I look for the thing that I can look back like when I go to bed, or when I'm, talking to someone else, that I can say, I'm proud of that decision that I made. And I think being able to do that for me, and I can't say that was me my whole life, but being able to do that lessens my anxiety so much, because love me or hate me, getting the media placement or not getting the media placement, I know I did my best. I showed up for others and I worked in a way that I could be proud of. And that to me is life-changing, honestly. If you can say that about what you're doing, I think a lot of that anxiety goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it also comes with like you said, confidence, and getting older. As we're getting older, that is that that confidence that we have in ourselves, that we really just don't care. We care what people say, but we don't care about the judgment. We think as as we're younger, we think people are judging us, and that's where, that a lot of that comes from. But as we get older, it was like, well, they're going to judge you no matter what anyhow.
Absolutely.
And they do that unconsciously. So, I think it just comes from, being older. Now, my next question for you, Nicole, and this will be the last question, unless, LaShonda has another question for you.
I wanted to ask her really, excuse me. I wanted to ask her really quickly before we close out. I wanted to know what the big hype of, if we can share with our listeners, what the big hype of PR is, the importance of PR and what you do mean about strategic communications. If we can just get a quick clarity of that within 60 seconds, if you can explain that.
Sure. So strategic communications, there's a lot of people that think PR is just getting your name in the press, right? Or it's getting in front of people to speak. And well, media relations is a component, securing speaking opportunities for our clients is a component, social media is a component, all of those things. It really needs to be tied to a strategy. And too often, working in this industry, when I was working for others, it was siloed, almost like, hey, look, we got in People magazine, but your audience you're trying to reach is, let's say millennial teenagers or whatever. Like that doesn't mean that's your target demographic. So I would say PR, when it's done well, is like any kind of marketing, really. So you start with what that strategic goal is, right? Mm-hmm. And you say, here's what I want to accomplish. Typically it's tied to money. I want to make more money. So then you take a step back and say, in order to do that, who do I need to be in front of, right? Who's my audience? Then we take a step back from that and say, where do they live? What do they read? What do they consume? What events do they attend? What magazines are they picking up? And then we take a step back from that and say, what is the message? So what resonates? What do they care about? What's relevant in the news cycle right now? And really, when people show up and ask us like, hey, do you do social? Hey, I really need to be in the press. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's take a step back and actually figure out what your goal is, because what you think you may need to do may not be correct. Or we can do this, but this isn't the primary concern. So I would say from a PR perspective, realize it's not just media relations. If you call me and tell me like, this is what I need to do, I'm going to ask you why and why you think that that's the way to get your name out there. And we'll always start with your goals because we want to make sure you get ROI for the communications that you're doing.
Right.
Good. Thank you. That's good.
I want to take a moment also and kind of with our listeners, Caroline says, I always want to call her Carolina, but she's not Caroline. Caroline, love you, girl. Technical issues are an equal opportunity issue. I love that. I have to share that. Absolutely share that. But Nicole, our last question is, you're a business owner, you're a mom, you're a wife. How do you do self-care? I mean, I can just make it, I had 3 kids that was just all over the place, and mine are in their 30s now. Thank God. Thank God. But, I understand, being a mom, self-care. How do you do daily self-care?
So self-care is different for everyone. I don't consider self-care to be bubble baths and going in and facials, which I do those things, don't get me wrong, like they are definitely part of my kind of routine more than it is self-care. For me, self-care all starts in the mind, right? So making sure that your mind is healthy. If my mind is healthy, that to me is taking care of my soul. And so I make a point to practice gratitude every morning before I get out of bed. I lay there and I say thanks for the things to God, for the things that I have that are positive in my life. I do the same thing when I go to bed every night. I am more in tune with how I feel. If something is stressing me out, or even if I don't feel good about someone that I'm meeting with, I'm learning to trust my gut more. And that to me helps clarify a lot of things in my mind as well. I meditate, I have good friends I can talk to. All of those things help me and help my mind be in the right place. And I think that helps me physically. Do I eat? I also eat fairly healthy 90% of the time, holidays excluded, and Fridays. But I try to make good choices with what I'm putting in my body. Again, like I said, self-care isn't like, oh, I'm going to treat myself to this or I'm going to do that. It's really how I try to carry myself every day. And I know a lot of that starts with the mind.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, because I'm the same way. I will, when I have to disconnect, and my business partner knows that, I will disconnect. I will do not disturb on my phone. nothing. And I will just sit and do that, that relaxation, that meditation, because it's a mental thing that you have to just clear your mind in order to move forward a little bit. Now we're getting ready to close, and I want to say, thank you to our listeners that are out there. And Kat, Kat, I have not seen you in a while.
Kat.
Hello, I miss you, girl. I miss so many of you that, it's like I really do miss so many of, the comment, because this COVID, you can't get out. But Nicole, is there any last minute tips that you would like to give our listeners before we close?
I don't know if it's necessarily tips, but I'm just a big advocate of embracing the journey and embracing who you are right now at the time you are in your life. The more we try to, and this is not a PR person thing to say, right? We're all about optics and how everything looks and beautiful on the outside, but the more and more you just embrace where you are at this time in life, whether it's COVID or whether you're starting a business or you're running into, maybe I know a lot of people are facing financial troubles right now with their business, embrace where you're at right now and take a deep breath and know that you've got everything within you that you need to get to the next level and get through any troubles that you have right now.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, thank you, Nicole. And I want to thank our listeners for your listening. And in 2 weeks, on December 17th, we have another amazing lady who will be sharing her business journeys with us. And please go to our Instagram account, which is at The Real Business Women of Charlotte, and like our Instagram page, and also go to our YouTube page and subscribe to our YouTube page. Again, I want to thank you for listening to The Real Business Women of Charlotte, and thanking my co-host, Nicole, again, and our listeners, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.